Thank y'all so much for tuning in and continuing the conversation of MMA with me today. We're going to be talking about how a judge threw out the UFC's antitrust and Johnson settlement offers, completely rejected them, what that means for the UFC. We're going to go over the best videos I found online, really detailing and breaking down everything. And then also, we're going to go over the business of the UFC's and TKO after they merge with WWE, their financials. So hopefully I can give you some business insight on that as well, so we can make better guesses or hypotheses on what is going to happen for the future of the UFC, guys. So for the antitrust, guys, there's two different parts or two different lawsuits. One is for people, let's say it's like back in the day to 2018 or whatever, and it's, hey, we're suing you for money because you underpaid these fighters. The other lawsuit, the Johnson one, is to change the UFC's practices. There's a lot of people saying that the UFC has predatory practices. Most successful companies at the top do. Think about Apple, etc. That's just a great example. So they're saying they have predatory practices and there needs to be change in the way they do their contracts, pay structure, and running their business. So with that, we're going to get right into it. I'm going to play the first video. The next video I have is going to be a lawyer breaking it down even further. So let's go ahead and click play.
The UFC releases a statement after judge denies antitrust lawsuit settlement. In March, both the plaintiffs and defendants announced that a settlement agreement had been reached. Initially, the lawsuit sought damages ranging from $194 million to $1.6 billion, but the proposed settlement was set at $335 million. However, on Tuesday, Judge Richard Boulware of the U.S. District Court of Nevada rejected the $335 million settlement proposal for the Johnson vs. Zuffa and Lay vs. Zuffa cases, scheduling a tentative trial date of October 28th for the latter, according to online documents. Combat sports regulatory lawyer Eric McGracken provided insights into the implications for the UFC and shared additional details about the situation.
Now, this is probably the biggest story in combat sports. Let me explain what happened and where things probably go from here. So, real quick background. A handful of fighters sued the UFC, arguing essentially that they're an illegal monopoly, that they maintain their position of power through a series of unlawful practices, most notably dirty contract practices. That lawsuit covered fighters from 2010 to 2017 and was looking at over $1 billion of damages at trial. It got certified as a class action, and right on the eve of trial, a settlement was announced. It was announced that the UFC was going to pay $335 million to make the case go away. But that settlement was going to also cover a second case called Johnson that was looking to represent fighters from 2017 until the present day. And those fighters were suing not just for money, but also for contractual changes, trying to shake things up so current fighters aren't going to be under the oppressive landscape that past fighters have been under. Now, because this is a class action lawsuit, the parties can't just settle. A court has oversight over the settlement process and has to make sure it's going to be fair to the thousands of fighters who are going to be impacted by it. And last night, the federal judge overseeing the case said, no, this deal is not good enough. And the court's going to give reasons in detail about why it's not good enough, but essentially, the court thinks the fighters deserve more money, and the court thinks the fighters deserve far more significant contract changes than what was offered in this deal. So things are rejected now. So here's what it means. There's basically three options. Number one, the parties might appeal. They might say, hey, we had a deal in place. The judge was wrong in not approving it because it's a fair deal. But barring that, there's really only two things that can happen. The parties go back to the negotiating table, and the UFC is going to have to cough up a lot more money and make a lot more contractual concessions.
Following news that Boulware denied the settlement agreement, the UFC issued a statement addressing the decision after originally agreeing to pay $335 million to settle both lawsuits. The statement reads, "We obviously disagree with this ruling and believe it disregards the expertise of counsel from both sides, as well as that of an accomplished and expert mediator, all of whom have decades of experience in antitrust case law. It prevents the athletes from receiving what they have argued is in their best interest and unwinds an extensively negotiated settlement that, in the plaintiff's counsel's own words, would far surpass the typical antitrust class action settlement and is an excellent result for the settlement classes by all traditional measures. Additionally, by taking the unusual step of denying the settlement at this preliminary approval stage, the judge is also denying the athletes their right to be heard during this pivotal moment in the case. As we have said throughout this process, we believe strongly in the merits of our cases and are evaluating all our options, including, without limitation, an appeal, and have initiated discussions with plaintiffs' counsel who have expressed a willingness to engage in separate settlement discussions for the Lay and Johnson cases.
BuzzBrands offers a wide variety of high-quality, low-cost, and low-dose THC options. It's made for the functional person who uses THC, whether it's to enhance life, for pain, or for mood. They have energy drinks, my personal favorite, gummies, shots, and ice creams, guys. Whenever you make a purchase, enter Bear in the notes. On August 25th, I'll pick 2 or 3 of y'all, and we'll send y'all a huge care package of random items from BuzzBrands, guys. That's buckabuzz.com. Enter Bear in the notes. Let's get back to the show. So guys, you heard it right there. The judge, because it is a class action, judges get the end of this, at the end of the day, the judges get the say, or they have the oversight when doing it. So it's not just like a regular civil case, like where you break your back, 18-wheeler, you agree, $1 million, cut a check, that's it. The judge can actually overturn that. So why would the UFC not want it to be overturned? If you notice, the lawsuit goes all the way back to 2010. What's something around that time that was really, really different versus now? Like, what looked different about fighters in the 2000s versus now? Sponsors, 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 all over their shorts. Fighters used to be able to have their own sponsors. Do you remember that? That is no longer a thing anymore. It is just UFC attire. It's whatever the UFC wants them to wear. Think about like with the Venom, that crypto, that Bitcoin, you see it all the time, like crypto.com, whatever. Whatever the sponsor is, the UFC makes that deal with just them, and they don't give the fighters anything. And so another really big part about this, the judge is like, yes, awesome, there's a settlement, but that isn't going to change the issue, which is like these fighters can be making so much more money. Yes, the UFC, I believe, is a great catalyst. If you are smart and you have a business mindset, you can literally just be in the UFC and watch it explode your career with so many different other avenues of making revenue. Whether that's through your social medias, brand deals, sponsorship, promotions, not inside the octagon, obviously outside through your social media, right? And then also comparatively, like, yes, there is a very low paid fighters when you start off. It can be as low as like $10,000 for a win, 20 for a win, 10 for a loss. And that sometimes it's 10-10, 15-15, 12-12. Very, very small contract deals. But things with the UFC, you get bonuses. You can move up the rankings quicker. If you are good on the mic with your brain and at fighting, the UFC can be one of the highest paid. Obviously, it is the biggest driver when it comes to making superstars in the world of mixed martial arts, guys. So it's kind of funny when it's like, oh, the UFC doesn't pay their guys crap, which to some extent is very true, but I wish they would do more, like, give the fighters health care that can't afford it, help pay for their gym and coach, especially when they're upcoming, so they're not, like, sacrificing their lives and also having second, third, fourth jobs, because really when you start fighting, it doesn't make you any money. But that's also the other side of the coin. It's like, hey, yeah, fighting doesn't make you any money. You really should already know that unless you're at the top of the top, so you're just fighting because of the love of the sport, and that in itself is a whole nother grind, and is a completely awesome and admirable thing to do. But who am I? I'm not in the UFC. I'm just talking about it and just sharing my opinion. So with this, we're going to go over kind of what this means. This other lawyer, Eric Morgan, he did some little screenshots kind of breaking down what it actually means for this this settlement to be overturned. So let's go ahead and click play.
The antitrust trial back on. Date October 28th. Things are getting interesting. To settle, the judge wants to see big money in Lee and major contractual changes in Johnson. UFC wants certainty of settlement, but can they stomach offering a deal good enough to satisfy the judge? To settle both cases, it means a deal that will not let UFC keep on with business as usual. Much easier fighter free agency will probably need to be part of the equation for Johnson to settle. So do they just say screw it and roll the dice? If the UFC roll the dice, they might get their ass kicked for billions. But even if they win, and they might, they then have a second trial coming their way that threatens their business practices. Big decisions have to be made. This is the biggest story in combat sports. Judge says he will release his reasons for rejecting the settlements later. That will give parties better insight of what will be needed for a deal that court will approve.
I don't think this is the biggest news in combat sports. Maybe right now currently because there's nothing going on, but it definitely isn't the biggest news. I see MVP getting attacked. I see Bilal beating Leon Edwards. I see Leon Edwards' coach making excuses. All those topics are trending right now. This isn't necessarily trending. That's why I'm dropping it on Monday today, a few days ahead, so I can have one in the bank while I'm on vacation. So with that, guys, you're like, okay, the judge obviously wants more money than $335 million, and he wants changes to happen to their business practices. The UFC obviously doesn't want changes to happen to their practices because those changes, in every single detail, the UFC has worked out how to extract as much money possible, just like talking about the sponsor deals, you know, other fighters, how much they're paying them, how they don't have to do healthcare, how they don't have to do these certain things. So for every way the business of the UFC operates, it's to make them as much money as possible. It's a publicly traded company. Dana White is not the owner. He is the CEO, and the CEO's job is not to make the fighters happy or better. It is to make the shareholders more money, and it's to keep the people on the board happy. If you've never been on a corporate team and been in corporate meetings, they fucking suck. And as much as you want to do what's best for the fighters or best for your employees, best for the company, there's always corporate bullshit, dude. And if you haven't been on a corporate team, God bless you. You're actually really lucky. So with that, the next thing is the judge wants to see a lot of money. $335 million just isn't cutting it for them, even though that's what they agreed upon with the victims or the plaintiffs. And also, what the lawsuit was up to $1.6 billion. They settled at $335 million, guys. So whenever you're in a lawsuit, it's always going to be a different amount, right, than what they're asking for. So, you know, here's a great one. The UFC actually sued me, and they were wanting like hundreds of thousands of dollars. We settled for, I don't even know if I can say that. Let me go ahead and just cut that out real quick. So anyways, guys, you are in a lawsuit or something like that. They're asking for a huge, huge amount. You don't want to court. You don't want to deal with all the headache, so you settle. And a lot of times it's for a lot less. Let's see what the UFC is worth before they were with TKO. That's the merger with WWE. On April 2024, they were valued at $11.3 billion, just the UFC alone. With the WWE merging, making the TKO Group holdings valued at $21.4 billion. So, to all y'all listening out there who don't own a business or don't know really anything about business, basically if you haven't owned a business, you're like, oh man, who cares if it's more than $335 million? They're shitting money. You know, they're worth $21 billion. Let's see what's on their cash at hand. Guys, when a company is publicly traded, keyword is public, all their information is for us to see. So let's see what TKO's cash on hand is. Okay, their cash on hand is $0.24 billion. That's like $240 million, guys. A $21 billion company doesn't even have $300 million in the bank, guys. Think about that. Worth is different than liquid. It is so different than cash on hand. Cash is king, guys, so I'm telling you, the UFC does not want to be in this lawsuit. If I was UFC, I personally think cash is always king. I want to keep as much cash as possible. I'll talk to the judge. Let's change some of these regulatory practices. Let's change our contracts up, you know, in a way that will benefit the fighters more. Yes, in the long run, we're paying more, but we'll agree to pay the settlement less because of the drastic changes we're making to our contracts in an act of good faith. Let's make a good deal right there. For me, I would say keep the cash on hand. But I'm leaving it there, guys. If y'all had any entertainment or learned anything from this, give me a like or subscribe. September 1st, I'm going to go through all my subscribers. I'll send one of y'all a pack of some custom Pro V1 golf balls. Put your YouTube handle or name on there. Or if you're over the age of 21 and you want, I'll give you some stuff from buckabuzz.com, a little goodie package of energy drinks and edibles and all that good stuff. Leaving it there. I'm out. Peace!